Everyone, welcome back to Final Residence TV and episode number 44 of Van Halen Stories. Today, my guest is Paul Gervasi. Paul Gervasi, you might remember if you've watched the Charvel Gang documentary, which I love and watched again last night just because I love it so much. I've actually watched it. There might be a third time there. And it's because we're all so familiar with the Charvel story from Eddie Van Halen and his whole influence on that. Paul, we talked recently, and we're going to do this together today because Paul was there in the early days at Charvel when Eddie Van Halen was coming in the shop. And, of course, that documentary you need to check out if you have not checked it out, the Charvel Gang. So Paul also is a musician and a director. Paul, tell us a little bit about your career and your band Trouble in Heaven and the other things that you got going on, buddy.
Hey, Jeff, it's an honor. I follow your show. I'm a big fan, and
Thanks, man.
it's definitely honored that you asked me to be on. Yeah, my background is a musician first. I was working at Lockheed Aircraft, and I got laid off, and I was a musician, and I got a job. I thought I'd get a fun job at Charvel, and I was really young and stuff, and that was the first experience meeting, rock stars or celebrities and stuff, and worked there for a couple of years, and but I never thought I would be doing a film about Charvel years later, because I actually went from music, doing demos and producing music, and the bottom sort of fell out with recording studios in the mid 90s. Right. And I just found myself doing music videos and falling into film, which I was already an actor and a SAG member, and doing extra work, little parts. I got a little part on Deep Space Nine, and I got interested in directing, and you work with some big people. I got to work with Gaga, and they give you an IMDb credit, and then I worked with Melissa Manchester was my first artist for me to direct. Mm-hmm. A Grammy winning artist, that she gave me a chance, got me in there as far as putting my company, Royal Rock Films, on the map. So in the interim of that, around 96, 95, I signed. I had a development deal with A&M Records with my band, like a solo artist, and that fell apart. And then I started recording. I started a band, Trouble in Heaven, and we started recording on our own. And that's when my music, I'm such a late bloomer, started to find my sound as a singer, songwriter, guitarist. And I was hanging with like Linkin Park, and Brad was playing a 7-string guitar. So he's the one that influenced me to play a 7-string guitar, which changed my music. And that's when I found my sound. So yeah, Trouble in Heaven is currently happening right now, but I'm here to talk about Van Halen, and I've got a couple stories for you.
Yeah, man. When you were at Charvel, how old were you then at that time?
My Hollywood age, or well, Jeff, we don't talk about that.
Okay.
I was diapers.
Right. Well, you were there in the very beginning, right when it kind of broke. That was the thing. Is you were there.
I was there during the highlight, like 81. Was it 81 to 83? Yeah.
Yeah. And that was like the crucial point where the Super Strat became the thing, and Eddie Van Halen kind of broke that open with his guitar. So when you first run into Eddie Van Halen, what's the situation? What's the first time you've ever ran into him or met him?
I sort of wrote out a timeline. I wrote some notes out because I didn't want to get messed up.
Sure.
When I was a kid, I was playing bass in a band because I was too young to play clubs. But if bass players were so in demand, I thought I'll play bass, and this band will have me. I'll be able to play clubs. I was really a guitar player, mm-hmm. And I was in this band, and they were saying, "We've got to go to LA. You've got to see this band, Van Halen." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, cool." Knew nothing about them. All I knew was the drummer was telling me how good this band Van Halen was. So we jumped in the car. I was born in California, and I'm a Southern California native. It was an hour to drive to LA, and we went to the Whiskey, And at that time, there was no body search, not much security, no ID check. It was so loose back then. It was great. Parking was easy. It was great. So we go to this show, and it's funny. The Dogs opened up for Van Halen.
Okay.
The place is packed. The Dogs open, and years later, Lauren Molinaire,
Who was my last guest? Yeah.
Was artist relations at Black Star Amps, and he signed me a deal, and we became friends. And he says, "Yeah, I was in the Dogs," and I'm like, "Oh," I saw you open for Van Halen at the Whiskey before Van Halen's first record came out." So we had a little bonding moment. He's a great guy. He's not there. He's not with Black Star. He's doing his Little Caesar thing. He's in a couple of bands, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, anyways, they were sort of Iggy Pop or kind of rock punk vibe, very simple, straight ahead rock. And I was like, okay. Mm-hmm. So they get off stage, and all of a sudden I saw they unveiled the Van Halen, the kick drums and the bass, just stacks of. Michael Anthony had a stack of Ampeg amps. Eddie Van Halen had like 3 Marshall stacks. It was a lot of gear, and they had, I remember they had techs coming down, and the room was packed. The bottom was packed, and if you know the Whiskey, there's an upstairs level. We were upstairs, and it was totally packed. And this is the first time I've ever experienced the atmosphere change. Does that make sense? Like, this was like church, and everyone knew something was about to happen. I was like looking up at the ceiling and the people, and it was kind of quiet, but you could feel the tension. And all of a sudden, there's steps on stage right of the Whiskey. You saw them walk down and just rip into their set. And David Lee Roth was really flamboyant, like kind of Jim Danny-ish, and just took control of the crowd. I couldn't believe how confident this guy was. Like, man, that guy's really confident. And they exploded into their set. And I remember again looking, man, there's something happening here. The atmosphere is changing. These guys are incredibly good. They're incredibly loud, and people just were going nuts. And looking at Eddie Van Halen playing the black and white striped guitar that he made from the parts he got at Charvel from Wayne. I remember going, what is that guy doing on guitar? I couldn't figure it out. And the PA was really, back then, they were so loud on stage, that PA system couldn't handle them. So you couldn't hear vocals well. It was pretty raw and nasty. Again, you couldn't, I every once in a while I would hear like really amazing harmonies, but it wasn't until later I hear the first record come out at Tower Records and how polished it was, and how just how slick that first record was, the layered vocals and stuff. Anyways, so I'm gonna let you say something there, but that was the first introduction to seeing Van Halen before the first record came out at the Whiskey.
Yeah, that's wild, because that you did see the black and white guitar then in its kind of first painted form, right?
Yeah.
So that was probably I'm trying to think, that was late 77, I think, or mid 77. They say he painted it roughly. So
right.
That'd have been kind of like really close to when they got signed, I guess, is what you would have seen, right? About 8 months maybe before you saw the record.
Dave announced that they had a record coming out. They got signed to Warner Bros. And there was a record coming out soon.
Okay, so it's after the signing, but yeah, in the middle of that, yeah.
I tell people, if they want to make you have to really believe that you're there. And like, he had us believing they were already rock stars and they were already there. But we found out later that Warner Brothers had put them in the $2 million debt range until like the third record, until the record contract ran out, and then negotiated. At that time they had some power, but it's just amazing that's the amazing thing about David Lee Roth. He had people believing that they were, had money and stuff, and things were going great, and they were rock stars, when it was a very shaky start, and probably until the third record.
Right.
Yeah.
That's they always talk about that first tour, how they came back and they found out they were millions in debt. And
Yeah.
right.
So,
But typical, yeah.
after the whiskey show years later, around 80, between 81 and 83, I don't remember what year it was. I'm working in the shop at Charvel, and this guy walked in, a little guy with a Hawaiian shirt, long hair, and I was like, a lot of people walked in there, and I was looking over. I'm like, that's Eddie Van Halen, and I was surprised how small he was, and he was really quiet. And I kind of, there's a few personalities with Ed. There's a very shy side, and there's the drunken, belligerent side that people don't want to believe. But he was really quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Alan Holzer was there. And like I say in the film, the original Charvel gang, he was a big fan of Alan Holzer because of the way he played. And that was the only one that excited Ed. The way he played, was like, 10 fingers on the fretboard. It was pretty bizarre, but they were buddies. And he pulled up in a Porsche, a red Carrera Porsche, and we all were kind of watching him in the parking lot. And he was very quiet and very shy. And I realized later he was in a lawsuit with Grover Jackson and Charvel Jack. Well, no, it was Charvel then. They were in some sort of dispute over that Bumblebee guitar.
Right, the second guitar, the black and yellow. Yeah. So
that was the second time I was around him. Didn't really talk to him.
Right.
There was a few encounters with him.
Let me ask you a couple questions. Number one, I had some of the early journalists, in fact, his first interviewer, Jazz Obrecht, on here, and Jazz said that Eddie Van Halen was such a shy person that he felt like he actually almost got into the wrong line of work, and that's kind of some of the reason why he kind of had so many problems with anxiety and whatever that he was having trouble with. It was just his nature was not show business, I guess. I don't know. Is that how you felt to you?
I just think all of us artists are really sensitive people, and we wouldn't be good at what we do if we weren't sensitive to art and being creative, and our minds wander and stuff. Mm-hmm. And drinking affects people differently. And when he drank, he was not always a nice person.
Right. But I think
another story. Well,
go ahead.
So my next encounter was at the NAMM show. This was when Hagar had joined and 5150 came out.
Right.
And I met Sam. Sam was kind of too cool for school, but I talked to him and talked to Michael Anthony. Mm-hmm. This is the NAMM, and this is before all the security stuff at NAMM. Mm-hmm. And Ed was with Kramer. I think he was at the Kramer guitar booth, and anyone could just walk up, say hi. He had 8x10 photos, which he signed. I still have it.
Wow, cool.
Signed it to me to Paul. And I remember how loose it was. No security. He was just there sitting. It was really nice. I knew Ken Dean, the assistant engineer for all those first Van Halen records.
Okay.
And this is another funny story. I forgot about this one. We used to hang out at Mount Baldy, and Ken Dean lived up there. And I remember I don't know how I met him, which was just, a bar, a mountain bar, bands were playing stuff, and we met, and he was, cool looking dude and really nice to me. And I'm like, every time I went, this guy was really nice to me. And I was like, why is this guy so cool to me? It turns out it's Ken Dean. He hands me his card. It had Warner Brothers on it. And he says, yeah, call me anytime, come hang out. And I'm like, this is Van Halen. And I knew at that point that he was Van Halen's the second engineer.
Right.
A lot of people don't know about him, but, he worked with, obviously, assisted Don Landy, I guess.
Right.
But I figured it out. He liked it because we hung with all these hot girls, the young hot girls at this club, and I knew everybody. I'm like, he wants to meet these girls.
I got you.
I remember even calling once during a session. He was in a session with Van Halen, and it was like, dude, don't call me here. I'm calling to say hi or something. But that was one other little story.
Wow. Let me ask you about Charvel. I forgot to ask you this question about Charvel's shop, Wayne's shop, when we first were in there. Or in, well, I don't know if Grover was in at that point when you were there. Was Grover with you at that? He had taken over for Wayne by the time you were there, right?
I never met Wayne until years later. So yeah, Grover Jackson was the owner at that point.
Okay.
He took control in what, 79?
Yeah. So is that the same original shop that Wayne was in?
No, Wayne started in his garage and moved a couple of times. And the San Dimas, which is actually Glendora,
Okay.
that was uh, that's where I believe all the magical years were at that shop, and that's when they made the best guitars. And those guitars, if you find them made around early 80s,
Hmm.
before they moved to Ontario and before Texas, those guitars are very expensive now. If you can find them, you could just put them in your hand and feel how perfect and how much care went into the making of them. How just the way they were made, they were just so top notch, top level guitars. The
So you,
necks, the body, the pickups, everything was high end, like a race car.
yeah. So you were at the San Dimas Glendora location, is where you were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah, we called it Sandy. I think San Dimas sounded better, but technically I think it was Glendora. It was like right on the borderline. It's kind of weird, but that shop is still there. It's been through a few changes, and we actually went back there to film interviews with Mike Shannon, Tim Wilson. We went back to that shop and set up right outside the office door. And I remember being there. We had one building, which is probably an office and three other rooms, a big wood shop. And then it got so big, Grover rented out a shop across the street. So then we had two buildings we would walk to back and forth through the road there.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was wondering, is what it was like inside and what kind of layout it was at that point when you guys, how many employees at that point you think?
30 to 50.
Wow.
It kept growing.
Yeah, right. I knew it got really big at one point. Your documentary covers that, how big it finally gets, in the mid 80s before
Yeah.
Grover exits that. But yeah, that was such an amazing story, and true about, you're talking about in the documentary about how Gibson and Fender were kind of losing their way, and Charvel just came in with great product that was solid, and it had of course the Super Strat thing was a thing that was going on, but the product quality was so high, like you said, and people were just really going for those guitars at that time.
Yeah, Grover's definitely an expert luthier and just wanted to make stuff better. And he realized that a smaller group of the pro players, I think it was pretty innocent and organic, that they wanted a straight neck, a strong neck, like choice wood, maple, bird's eye maple, mahogany, all the, exotic woods.
Mm-hmm.
You could order a guitar, and every guitar was a customer would order a guitar and be specific: the color, the pickups, the neck, the wood. The headstock were mostly Fender headstocks, which later was conflicting with Fender. That's why they ended up changing. Grover came up with the headstock for the Jackson guitars. But
Right.
a little disclaimer,
Mm-hmm.
as you probably know, if you get something wrong in a film or a documentary or even a podcast, people lose their mind. I made a couple mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and one of my big mistakes in the film is I didn't. Maybe it was an interview, but the Jackson headstock. Let me go back a bit. Greg Leon had called me and said, "Hey, you got that part of that story wrong." I go, "Oh, which part?" He goes, "When Randy Rhoads went there, see, no one was there when Randy and Greg Leon went there. Well, I found out Greg Leon was with Randy Rhoads, and he's the one that brought him there. This is, again, you're doing a documentary. Sometimes you have to go by what someone's telling you, and you don't always know the truth, or especially musicians, stuff gets a little sketchy as what really happened, what the story was. But
Mm-hmm.
according to Greg, it was he brought Randy Rhoads there and went there every time they were working on that Concorde, that that Shark guitar, the white one.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I always thought it was Randy Rhoads said, "Hey, let's call it Jackson." Well, Greg thinks it was Grover, says, "No, let's call it Jackson," and split the brand up. Didn't want it to be conflicting. Also, there was this uh, lawsuit going on with the Stratocaster headstock. So
Right.
we couldn't use that headstock anymore. So they all went to
The pointy headstock, the pointy Jackson and Hunts. Yeah.
kind of like an Explorer head. We did pretty cool headstock. But my mistake was I remember seeing, see, those were all decals that said Charvel and Jackson, right? Well, I remember seeing someone hand paint Jackson on the headstock. I think it was outside. It was weird. But I was new there, and Ernie was the painter then. I didn't really know him.
Yeah, I
I
know
thought,
that.
I assumed he was a hired guy because I only saw him that one day painting on Jackson with the gold leaf.
Hmm.
And I remember that, but Ernie called me and says, dude, that was me. I was the original painter there during the highlight. And he had, I don't know what happened. He left when I was there. He was only there for like a month or so when I was there. So I don't know what year he left, but uh, I was incorrect. He was the painter there, and he's the one that hand painted the Jackson before they had the decals, because you can't hand paint all, which are really valuable now. You can't hand paint the logo on every guitar. So later on they got the logo, but that was one mistake I made. And then the calling that Randy Rhoads guitar Jackson was I believe it was Grover's idea to call it that.
Right. There's that story that Grover, he was afraid of the perception of the two brands and how that would come across with you when you had a Strat style Super Strat that was known as a Charvel, right? And then you had this thing, the Concorde, which was so different. I think
I'm
that's
sure to put his name on mark on the world, like I
sure.
could start brands, which was I think was brilliant, was a good idea.
Yeah, well, it's
Start the,
incredible what's happened with it since then, and even
yeah,
now that he's not involved in it, but still the name carries on the Jackson guitars. Of course, Charvel's still in the same mix too, so that's kind of cool. Both names are still
yeah,
out there, and it's
yeah.
such an
Again,
iconic.
it is growing twice this quadruple in size, and then you have Charvel and Jackson. Plus, he puts his mark on the world with his name, and you know,
Yep, the Rhodes guitar, which was such an amazing guitar, and yeah, Grover told me the story about of Randy, and Greg Leon was on here, and he told me about going there with Randy as well, and doing
oh,
that.
good,
Yeah, he actually related the story of going there and how they sat down and did that design. It was I think during the holidays in the wintertime, something like that. But yeah, it's an amazing story. So, going back to Van Halen, and did you see them much after they, 80, or you see him anytime after 80? You said you saw him at NAMM. What else was there other times?
well, I just wanted to interject.
Go ahead.
The other possible mistake was
Okay.
that the Bumblebee guitar, the famous yellow and black one.
Mhm.
The disclosure is like, I think Grover was more part of that than Carl Sandoval, and Carl claimed he did 90% of the guitar. I don't know. I think Grover was more involved, but
Well, Grover said he was, and I've heard that, that it sounded like they kind of both were involved, from what I understand.
I get the feeling Grover was more involved. But they made 7 or 9 of those guitars,
Yeah, they did.
and yeah, I wasn't there then when that all happened, but man, when that second album came out, that was the coolest looking guitar. I mean, I've talked to even the new metal guys in Korn were like, that was guitar with an edema. They were saying that guitar was so cool, and I thought it was so cool.
Of course,
But there was
Dimebag thought it was so cool that it ended up in his casket with him. I mean, he loved that guitar so much. I
yeah,
think that was the one he was trying to get Eddie to make him one like or something, and then when he passed, um, Eddie said he should have the original. Is what he said, something like that.
yeah.
That's amazing.
Carl did tell me that when I don't know if maybe I don't think Grover and Eddie got along. I think there was just conflict there. So Carl dealt with him, and he came to pick up that guitar
Hmm.
and left with that guitar. Was pretty happy with it, dug it, and then brought it back a couple months later. And it was just Eddie was pretty he was pretty hard on his instruments. That thing was just destroyed and beat up, had a different neck on it, and he was always messing with it. Like the body was the only thing that stayed the same,
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah.
another.
He did say that in a lot of interviews that he messed with that guitar a lot, and you know it did become sort of iconic though in the images that Niels Lozauer took on the inside of Van Halen 2. You know, those are kind of like what brought it into our consciousness. If you weren't from the area, right? If you were just some guy out in the middle of the United States, that guitar when it was introduced to us was probably Van Halen 2 in the inside cover stuff.
Yeah, Neil took some amazing photos, and just the colors were popped. And another thing you got to realize that Van Halen, those guys were like really not models, but they were photogenic because they just looked like rock stars. So they made that guitar look good. And I remember seeing that black headstock on a Strat, which you never saw before. I'm like, that's so cool looking. But Ed destroyed those guitars and changed the necks so many times. And he wished.
I was gonna say that great photo of Carl that you're talking about has the black head on it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it looks so cool. It looks cool too.
Ed even was regretting taking the black and white guitar, the original one, which is a million necks on it, and making it Frankenstein red and white one, and red, white, and black, which he was regretted doing, and I wished he would never done it. I imagine if the black and white one was still in its original body and that shape, that's probably one of the most expensive guitars in the world.
I was going to say, you know, you had interviewed Slash in your documentary, and Slash was another guy like you that apparently had saw Van Halen in the early days too, and was really going to all the shows and stuff from what I remember from people telling me.
Yeah. Did you interview Slash?
I haven't interviewed him yet, but I'd love to interview him. Yeah. He'd be great.
Yeah. Slash, you heard it there, baby.
Yeah. He would,
Jeff's number.
Well, yeah, he was there doing kind of the same thing a lot of you folks were doing in LA at the time of hearing about this band and going and seeing them. And then, you know, it was amazing the impact it had it locally, you know, as well.
Yeah.
Before, so all that. But so from the point in 80 or the NAMM show, was there, what other Van Halen interactions did you have after that? I mean, obviously you worked with Michael Anthony in your documentary.
I'd have to give me a second to think about me seeing Ed. I saw a lot of shows. Women and Children first. That was an amazing show. I saw them at the LA Coliseum. I thought they destroyed Aerosmith. The sound was better, and they were just totally destroyed. So I saw them a couple of times, and the last time I saw them was in Vegas with Wolf was on bass. It seemed to be missing the original. How do you say the original chemistry I thought was gone, and I thought Alex was really good, but it was just kind of Roth's voice wasn't the same. But I did have an encounter with David Lee Roth. This is crazy. Again, things were easier to get into. I go to the American Music Awards, and I think Sonny Hilden invited me, and she was a songwriter. We were both like trying to be songwriters and make it in a band and stuff. And you tend to think, well, just go to network and go to tons of functions and stuff. And I think I actually had a suit on. So we go to the American Music Awards, which is like, you feel a shift when you start going these things and rubbing elbows with Paul Simon and Whitney Houston and Janet Jackson and all these bands. That's actually Kenny Loggins was there. Mm-hmm. Where was I going with this?
To Roth.
So we go to the after party. I forget where it was. This famous restaurant in Beverly Hills. We walk in, and they were handing out these little automatic cameras, like Instamatic throwaway cameras. They were handing them out at the door. I'm like, oh, this is going to be crazy. Wow. So everyone's taking pictures, and I'm standing in there, and at the main table, Bon Jovi was sitting there with Motley Crue.
Okay.
Imagine that. Tommy was with Heather Locklear at that point, and I remember being very careful whenever I approached him. And somehow I went up and said hi to Heather, and it's like they were all partying and stuff. They totally ignored, but Heather was really nice to her, really nice to me. And then I saw Roth come over to the table, and he had just was doing his solo thing, right?
Right.
And I thought it was bizarre. He was really schmoozing with Richie Sambora. I'm like, that's why is he doing that? Well, now it makes sense because he wanted him for his band, probably.
Probably he was.
That's Richie had as a, at that point they probably realized that singles were having a hit single was more important. That was a big deal back then.
Right.
So,
well, he did. Steve Stevens was on here, and of course he approached Steve Stevens as well.
Oh yeah.
Prior to Steve Vai, yeah.
Yes, Steve's a great guitar player. He was another great interview for the Charvel gang. So, anyways, we go to the bar and we're drinking and stuff, and you just know some of these people are actors, whoever, don't approach them. It's not going to go well. You start to get a sixth sense, and I'm like, I cannot go up to, because Roth was ignoring everyone except this one guy he was with. It kind of looked like a cocaine dealer hanger-on guy, and they were like laughing and talking, and I could see that people were trying to talk to Dave, and he just wouldn't talk to anyone but his buddy, and they were joking, and I remember they were cracking jokes about a straw and snorting. So, did he gonna snort that? And then they were cracking jokes. So that was one incident with Roth. And one thing about growing up in Southern California, like people, I guess, should know, when you're sort of within that 50-mile radius of LA and the outside, and then that musician groups, we somehow find each other and we hear about each other, and everyone, it's a small shop, everyone knows everybody. So I ran Roth a few times, seen him out and about, saw him at a ZZ Top concert, never talked to him. He just seemed unapproachable. And then Michael Anthony, one time I was at Lake Havasu, we were on a boat at London Bridge, and he was on his jet ski and said hi to him. He was always pretty nice. The only time I saw Alex Van Halen out and about was at a Disturbed concert, and I'm friends with Disturbed, and we would hang out and stuff, and I saw him. I really wish I would have went and said hi, because he was just sitting there with us in the VIP. Just figured, well, I'll see him later. And later that night, the guys in the Disturbed told me he came backstage, and I go, well, what was that like? He was really confident. So Alex Van Halen was checking out Disturbed at the House of Blues at Sunset. So that was an encounter with him. I didn't see Ed for a long time. So we're doing the film, and I was begging Matt Brock, Matt Bruck, his assistant,
right,
via email, and everyone was trying to help me. Says, Ed doesn't do interviews, and I'm like, man, I gotta just get him on the phone. Like, if I could get him on the phone, I could probably get him to do an interview, because cool. Could never get on him on the phone, so I realized later he was probably pretty sick at that point and wasn't wanting to talk to anybody, which I totally understand. So. Yeah, I was in contact with Matt Bruck just via email, and that was the last connection to Ed.
Right. Yeah, it's unfortunate that Ed didn't. I don't know. He left a lot of those things. That's one of the reasons I do this podcast. There's so many unknown details that he didn't ever come to do an interview to clear up. I mean, they did a little thing on that when the Different Kind of Truth album came out. When they did a little DVD, they had a little bit of extra footage where they talked about the record deal and some of those things that happened to them, but not a lot. Not a lot of detail, except for some of the books. Maybe Alex's book that's about to come out in October is going to unveil a lot of that. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. What a great drummer. Oh, wow.
Right. It's amazing to listen to those tracks, just listen to his kick drums, just listen to them by themselves, doing I'm the One or whatever. It's just mind blowing.
Hey, so Michael, I think this story's out there, but Michael Anthony had off camera told me he was so nice and funny. He told me so many funny stories. He says, yeah, one time Alex and I were at the Rainbow, and John Bonham was there with Richie Blackmore having drinks. And they went up to meet him, which they approached them, which is sometimes dangerous. And somehow John Bonham got up and tried to take a swing at Alex Van Halen, and Alex was a big fan of John Bonham. Yeah, it's in his playing. It's pretty funny.
I think I've heard a number of stories like that are well, a couple of them that were Bonham in particular, but yeah, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's really wild, the LA scene, I almost came out there to work, not work, to go to GIT in about late 80s. And that whole scene, man, tell me about Hollywood and about how, you said everybody in the music community knows each other pretty well. It's kind of like any town, I guess. You know a friend who knows a friend kind of thing. Tell me about that community. Like, because, for me, like here, like I know the whiskey has always been a difficult place, especially now to like you have to sell tickets and do all these things to play there. And like that's just not something that we ever run into. Everything's always normal here, and we don't ever have that kind of situation where we're having to do anything like that. We're just normal shows.
Yeah. Okay. So in their defense, the whiskey, I believe they rent the land that the building's on. I think they own the building, but there's some crazy clause about the Sunset Strip.
Oh wow!
So they got to pay their bills, and all they care about is having 7 bands in one night and paying their bills and making money. So it's a brutal, cutthroat business, and it's a little pathetic and sad sometimes. These bands go there and play, and they buy tickets, they spend thousands of dollars on gear, and they're trying to make it, and nothing happens. That's probably not the place to go.
Sure.
However, there's System of a Down. They played there. They have a huge Armenian following.
Okay.
They pack the place. You don't have a chance to make it at any club unless you play there several times. It's like you got to be relentless. And Van Halen was relentless. A few bands that were relentless. Then there's the flip side. The Go-Go's, what they did a couple of gigs and they got signed. Yeah, because it's fresh. It's all girls. It's totally new. It's totally self.
Right. Like Fowley, Kim Fowley, was instrumental in the Runaways, right? So that was late 70s, and there were acts that had done that club scene that like you said, that were the Crew, I guess, would be another one. Molly Crew.
Oh yeah, they struggled hard and built a following, and so, I believe when Van Halen got signed, because remember when Van Halen got signed, disco was the thing.
Right.
And they were so good, they busted right through that. And then, there's money. Oh, they're making money. So then all these other Motley Crue, Rat, I mean, how many bands, Dokken, Kill, all these bands, I think got signed from them, and, Great White. And all of a sudden, I think they opened the gates to that stuff, and they don't get credited enough.
Of course they do. That's one of the things I always say about Van Halen is they actually started the 80s before the 80s actually started.
Yeah, but the scene I was going
yeah,
the scene in LA for me, everyone, it's for different. I mean, if you're going to play that game and want to make it be a rock star or be successful in music, you have to be laser sharp and know what's going on, and don't make the mistake of following trends. But I was lucky enough to land. I had my studio in LA, which, Ernie Isley would come in and do demos. A lot of people would just do demos. And those demos sometimes led to me co-producing at A&M. And I was going to A&M parties. And back then you had cassettes. So I remember I threw in a cassette at a party, and I got someone's attention at A&M. Guy was just an engineer there, but had connections, and I got like this little backdoor development deal for a couple of years. Did 2 records there, and so that that opened the door to Oz, because you go in that's highly secure buildings. There's like 4 studios there, and you'd open the door and Sammy Hagar was there. Like one day I'm there and Bruce Springsteen's there, and I was never I'm a social person. I'm never afraid to go up to someone if they look approachable. And he looked very shy, and he didn't really know anybody there. And I could tell I could just sense that you could go say hi to him, and I did. And he was reading a local magazine, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And what was that band, Midnight Train, about the runaway train or whatever? That band was there.
Soul Asylum.
Soul Asylum was there, and his girlfriend, the Winona Ryder, was there, his girlfriend.
Okay.
And Bruce goes, I think I'm leading up to how stuff works and how you should network.
Yeah.
And Bruce goes, hey, is what's his name? Dave, the singer from that band? He goes, hey, are they in Studio A? And I go, I don't know, let's go find out. Well, I know if I walk in with the boss, ain't nobody going to stop us, right?
Right.
So we walk in the studio, and there's Winona, there's Dave, the singer, and the band's in there. They don't even know I exist. And I'm like, this is pretty funny.
Wow.
I go, hey, this is Bruce's. And all of a sudden, the conversation, they knew each other. They started hugging and talking. And I'm standing there like, I better get the hell out of there because they're going to go, who the hell are you? And I was in one of the other rooms doing my little side, making my records and stuff. And I got the hell out of there. And I wish I had a photo of that. That would have been.
Wow.
But as soon as he walked in, man, their jaws hit the ground, and I could see they were already friends. So
wow. Cool.
I have missed so many. I mean, probably got to do a book about all the crazy stuff that's happened to me and encounters and stuff. But
being in the area, just being there, being able to like you run into this in the situation. I mean, how crazy is that? And just being able to make that connection with somebody like that, it's got to be insane.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot. It's a very concentrated. It was back then. For the music industry, it was very concentrated to be living in LA because you would run into people, and if you were, I was lucky. I was doing sessions, so I played with a lot of different people, and if you were good, you would. Oh, I know so and so. Next thing you know, you're that development deal led to one of my guy was working with the Rolling Stones, Voodoo Lounge, doing that record. So yeah, we're getting invited to shows at the Rolling Stones, and here I am finally starting to meet people. Plus, I was doing extra work in movies and learning the whole actor game and watching people make a lot of money and a lot of people struggle. A lot of people getting depressed. Most people cannot stomach the rejection in LA and how tough it is. You can't be messing around. You have to be strategic. You got to be talented. You got to be lucky. And a big thing is just being a nice, humble person, which I even need to learn to be nicer and quieter.
Well, yeah, I mean, it does. It is about your personality a lot, and it's my one friend who is has one of the best gigs right now is he took the job in Leonard Skinner as the replacement for Gary Washington, and his superpower, he was number 2 on my interviews here on this channel, but for this particular Van Halen stories, but he just has his superpower is his ability to have relationships with people. He's so personable. He worked with Alice Cooper for 7 years and was on the road with him. And he's just been able to make all these things happen that we never thought. I mean, I guess I knew he was going to be someday something, but man, the stuff that he's done has actually been way beyond what we thought. It's crazy.
I've been a fan of you before we knew each other. And I thought you have a really good personality. It's very humble and low key. Very welcoming, very, that you say, yeah, you're going to definitely do stuff in this business. I mean, I'm sure your podcast has got you to, look, you had Steve Stevens on, right?
Yeah. And George Lynch. Yeah. I had some really great guests and a lot of people, a lot of people like yourself and that have had these close up encounters with Van Halen all through the years, which is really important to me, is to get the unknown stories out there, the things that the detail that the Van Halens haven't Eddie never uncovered himself. He could have, but he didn't.
Yeah.
The stories behind the stories,
We're going back to the networking thing. So I started, we need income. So I started I was working for big film companies, and it's really stressful working for these big, production companies and like doing a Gaga. I worked on that video Guy and I got a credit for that, but that was like a week long of stress. And she was the director on that. Very nice, but go on set with 300 people, you're going to get stressed out and you better not make any mistakes and stuff. So there's that. And I started my own film company, and, my first artist was directing and doing treatments for and editing for was Melissa Manchester. And later on, you start to get known. People start to see your work. The only thing that bugs me about it is people think you're only a director, and I'm really a musician. That's where I come from. My mom, classical pianist. My dad was a photographer, so I got film and music. And sometimes you get introduced as a producer, which is freaking annoying. I just say, hey, it's just Paul. Like, if you have to tell someone what you do, it's better if they find out on their own. So some people look at you as a director, and people look at you as a musician. But recently I got to work with Dolly Parton, direct her, and that was just mind blowing.
Wow.
So it's a pretty life once you get going, and it gets easier because that snowballs. When Kenny Loggins, and then the Jeff Tate thing, working with him, and it's funny. I got a call from a manager. They wanted me to direct a video, and the guy wasn't telling me who it was. I'm like, he comes to my house, we're talking. I'm like, all right, dude, who are we talking about? What's the big deal? He goes, it's Angel. And I was excited because I was a fan of Angel. I knew of him.
Sure.
And I got the gig because he could see I was passionate and excited about working with Angel. So got to be good friends with Punky Meadows and Frank Domino. And
yeah, he was in your documentary. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how that came about.
So let me ask you about Punky. Somebody had told me that Punky said there was the whole story about Angel and Van Halen, and that Angel was going to cut You Really Got Me before Van Halen. Eddie had showed him or let him listen to a recording of You Really Got Me, and they ran into the studio. Now, I've heard Punky said that wasn't true. Did he ever say that to you?
You told me it wasn't true, but
right, that's what I've heard.
I think Ed's, again, you never know who's telling stories. I think Ed's right. The one that had happened, or So yeah, I heard that. No, that's not true. Didn't never happen.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard that that
Don't Leave Me Lonely was about Goldie Hawn. That's who Frank wrote the song about.
What was it?
Don't Leave Me Lonely on one of the Angel records was about. He had an encounter with Goldie Hawn.
Oh wow! Okay, wow.
Yeah, but
that's cool.
You cross paths with a lot of people. It's just a matter of organically networking with them somehow,
right?
And you don't force yourself. And I see people, musicians, are so, I gotta be nice here, they're very desperate, and they elbow their way into stuff, and
yeah,
they end up going that far. You're better off to stay open to and keep progressing with your music.
Sure.
A lot of guys, I even see guys get stuck on learning Van Halen stuff. I mean, okay, that's great, but develop your own. Like, I moved on to 7-string guitar, and I feel like Trouble in Heaven. We just released our first single, Go. It's on YouTube, and very modern. It's very clean. Even the cinematography and the concept is very modern, and it's like Dune inspired and Blade Runner inspired. And I just thought it was weird when, did you hear my Eddie Trunk interview on Sirius? I was on his station.
I didn't, no.
And, well, he asked me about the scene with Rudy Sarzo and Vinny Appice, where I'm playing with them in a private jet hangar.
Right.
And thought, wow, that was really cool. And I was like, well, that's just part of me. That's an old style of doing the dive bombs. Not really my thing. I wrote a song with a groove with Vinny in mind, because I had a feeling, my producer, Valerie Ince, handled that segment, and she called them and asked them to do it. And they were happy to do it. And it was really a, kind of dream come true, Sabbath and Ozzy.
Right.
Because I had to do an interview. The film had taken a different course, and I was the host of the Charvel gang. So I said, well, I got to play something old school, which is really not my thing, but it's just fun to do. And Eddie was like, you guys got to think about putting a band together. I'm like, oh, geez. I don't think he digs the new metal stuff or the more modern stuff. And that's more my thing.
Right.
I didn't say anything to him about it, but I just said, yeah, that band thing is really complicated, meaning like that we're not going to start a band like that.
Right. Yeah.
There was a lot of money involved.
Yeah, you're right. It was a cool scene though, and it did, it came off like you guys were definitely enjoying yourselves, and Rudy seemed, Rudy's got a smile about him and a way about him that just seems so. He's I've met him multiple times, and he's always been really cool and easygoing. And I met Vinny actually not 6 months ago. I met him at a thing in Pasadena. I just walked there. He was. I'm like, what are you doing here?
Yeah. Well, we had probably that was the biggest set day, 30 people on set, and a lot of people that wanted to be there because they knew who was going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a lot of fun because, people were fanboying out on them. And Vinny was telling Sabbath jokes, and Rudy's pretty quiet. He came in sort of late. We
Mm-hmm.
actually had Rojo filled in on bass, and we got to play with Vin and me, and we got to run through the song. And then Rudy came walking in and took over the bass on that. So yeah, they had a good time. We had a bunch of food there, and it was fun. I think it was probably different for them. Like, we're jamming in this private jet hangar,
Right,
so it
right.
was probably pretty cool. Yeah, it was a fun
I
day.
noticed by watching it. I mean, it looked like you didn't have anything mic'd up. It was sort of like maybe one or two mics or something.
Um,
I didn't see any mic.
because I wrote the song, I emailed them this piece of music. It was just like a Hendrixy type jam,
Yeah, right,
and I gave it to them, and they learned it, and then we did a couple of rehearsals. Like I say, Rudy wasn't there, so Tommy Rojo came in, and we did a couple run throughs with Ben, and
right,
I didn't wait. I didn't mess around playing any Van Halen or Sabbath songs. I only had them because we're paying them by the hour. Like, we only had them for so long, so I
right.
wasn't going to kept going over that song, and that's sort of how it came about. But some people gave me shit about being on the jet because, again, I had to be the interviewer, and if I'm the producer and director, I'm going to go big. I'm
Right.
going to do something little. So I got a hold of these private jets, which I think I was in some doctor's jet. We weren't flying. We were sitting on the tarmac, and I did my interview on the jet. We added sound like the jet was flying, and I'm doing my interview.
Right, right,
It's kind of a joke. Like, oh, come on, I'm on a jet. Like, how cool is that?
right,
And
right.
then that in the hangar was a different jet. I wasn't in that. It was two different jets.
Okay.
And, haters online were probably hating on me, and I was like, dude, it's a joke. I'm on a jet doing my interview. Looks cool. So we added the sound of the jet flying on that jet. And then we
Right.
cut in between my interview and us playing live. And actually so we recorded that song live with two microphones.
That's what I was gonna say. I noticed it
However,
sounded good. Sounded good though.
yeah, it was just two microphones. That's what those mics were. And to do coverage, we only had one camera. So we did one recording of it was the master film version of just me and Vinny, and then we played it back, and then it was Vinny and Rudy, and they were pretending to play to what we just recorded, which is kind of strange to record a song and then do a video to it.
Right,
So I
right,
had to explain, Vinny's like, what are we doing? I go, we're going to video mode, just pretend to play to what we just recorded, which
right.
is pretty ingenious of myself, but it's kind of unheard of to do it a video like that. And then we did coverage from behind, the side, Vinny, separate. But at that point, I think we only recorded 2 takes of the song, and
Right.
just kept going over and over and pretending to play to it. So that's how that sort of came about. It's a lot of work. It's involving, and it looks cool, but
People don't.
it does come off live, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. People don't realize that, if you're going to get all those different angles and cuts, you got to do the reenactment sort of situations after you record, or, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite intensive, and quite a lot of footage to go through, the B-roll and all that afterwards. You figure out what you want to use.
Yeah.
It's,
So what do we know? Let's talk about Van Halen.
Mhm.
I'm seeing like a lot of amazing live footage show up on YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping there's a box set. I thought they were best in 78, 79 for the live show because Roth still had his voice.
Hmm.
Can we not get a box set going of live and a DVD and put the stuff properly together? Like the Oakland show is recorded good.
Oh yeah.
Why
Love it.
can't it? I'm thinking that they can't agree on stuff, so nothing can come out except that's why we're seeing Hagar stuff because Sammy don't play and he's getting stuff released. Uh, but I want to hear some unreleased tracks. And you can find stuff on YouTube, but that's what was driving me crazy about the Charvel movie, because it was bits and pieces on YouTube, and it was crap. You know, the quality was low, and that's when I was trying to explain to him, I want to do a high quality, high def film and organize it like it's a book in chapters, so
Hmm.
people may understand. And you know, you could go on and on forever about the chapters, and but I was pretty happy with, because it was a 5-year process, 3 years filming, and I remember going, I think I've got it. I've got enough interviews. I don't want to wait for anyone else. I'm not going to get Ed. Let's cut the film and put it out.
Right, right, right. And it's out on, you can watch it on Prime like I did last night, and it's probably on all the other platforms, right?
But are you hearing anything about any Van Halen releases, the box sets, live DVDs?
Well, like you said, there's the politics inside the band, and it still seems to be the thing that holds up any kind of, you know, releases like that. I mean, everybody talks about the 81 wanting to have a high quality version of that, even if it's the same. I mean, everybody just wants a remastered version of it, really, and they'll pay for it, but they won't
Yeah.
put it out. So
Hey, Wolf Van Halen, if you're listening to this, get there with Jeff and explain what's going on. Or
right.
we'd love to see some box sets, some live DVDs with Roth when he had it there. And
I think Wolfgang would like to see it. Honestly, I think Wolfie. I have talked to Wolfie, not about that, but he is very he's very astute about his father's history and all the music and all the videos, and he knows all about it. But what he said in public is that it's just so much difficulty between. I don't know if he kind of wanted it Roth, but he didn't say Roth. But he said, I guess it's kind of like Journey. Journey has to go back to Steve Perry for everything they do. I believe is the deal they have. He at least has to give it an okay if it has him involved. And if you're going to have Roth in the mix, I don't know how the negotiation of that happens. And it just seems like Wolfie is kind of throws his hands up in the air and goes, what do I can't do anything.
yeah, he's in a tough, probably in between.
Right.
I
And I don't know. I mean, I don't know how he's going to, I don't know why Roth is so resistant. There are great, I've heard, and I don't know if this is true, but I've heard from reliable sources, there are pro shot 70, 78, 79, 8, all the tours. There's actually full concerts that are out there that, we saw that one pop out from Downington, was it like about a year ago? The one that came up, and then they had those two that came out from Japan and Australia last year that were pro shot. Did you see those?
Yeah, what was the one in Europe? That was amazing. One of their last tours, the freaking quality was amazing.
Yeah, there was one actually in
Was that for minutes and someone took it down? I'm like, can
yeah,
you please box it? Remember, they finally released all the Zeppelin live stuff, and it just
yeah, of
started
course.
out. I was like, oh my God, the Holy Grail has finally landed here.
Yeah, the whole box set thing, that thing that came out actually Downington came out a little while ago, right? The high quality footage of them playing at Downington. And then you had that one thing that came out, the two concerts from 2015 that were Australia at Stone Festival. Maybe that's 2013. And then
Yeah.
the show they did in Japan that they released on an official live release.
Oh yeah, the dome thing.
Yeah, yeah. So that all came out, but then got taken right down. But of course people keep putting it up. But yeah, there's been these leaks, and I know that there's footage, but it's like it gets taken down all the time, and it's like,
That's what you would think they would get tired of the leaks and say. And then me, I'm like, all right, someone put a quality thing together, because this shit's already out. I think that's what happened with Page. He was tired of the bootlegs and decided to put stuff out.
yeah. And I was going to say that was what I was about to say is that Page, Van Halen always took their cues, at least what Alex said anyway, back in the day, was that, would Led Zeppelin do it? And yes, they would. They did, they
Oh,
put, they put out their archival footage, and I don't know why Alex hasn't taken the same tack, except for the fact that maybe Roth and him can't get it together, on it. That's all I
I
can.
think Part of him died when Eddie died. Alex
Oh,
was
absolutely, absolutely.
part. And I was really shocked that he'd sold his everything and even his gold records, and pretty kind of bizarre.
Yeah, that was that whole auction that just happened. Yeah, it was quite a thing. I mean, I know he's probably still got stuff, but still the gold records and the family heirloom stuff that was pretty surprising to me. Like selling literally
Yeah,
pieces of their family history. I guess you
yeah.
can't keep it all. I mean, but
It might be a process for him,
huh? Process part of the process.
a healing process.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that they had a interesting life, and I spent a lot of time in Pasadena the last 3 years. Every year I go to NAMM, and then I go to Pasadena for a week and spend time not only going to all the sites and all the places, but meeting with a lot of the people in person and getting a feel for what it was like to live there and be part of that community and the guys like you and the surrounding musician communities. I'm meeting a lot of those people through this podcast, so it's really cool to get a feel for those times, like when you came into that in the very beginning and hear from people who were there. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I got a friend who lives right by Ed's 5150 compound, and he would always, Chris Bruno, actor, he
Hmm.
would always say Ed would hang out at the bowling alley down below on Ventura Boulevard.
Yep. Yep. He was.
I'd see him around town here and there, or would drive by in a car. But you see a lot of people drive by in cars and crazy stuff. And I remember one year I saw George Michael at the peak of his career was driving down La Cienega, turning right on Melrose in a convertible Mercedes, hair perfect, the earring, the beard, peak of his career, and he's cruising down the streets.
That's wild, man. It's hard to believe when you got five. What is it? Five? I don't know how many million people living in that town.
It's the west side of LA. It's a concentrated, between West Hollywood and Beverly Hills is where you're going to see people.
Right.
And then there's Grove now. You'll see like Steve Carell or someone walking through, or
Yeah.
Matt Damon or Mark Wahlberg, or
Yeah. It's pretty wild. Pretty wild. Like when you said you were at the studio and you ran into Bruce. I mean, that's got to be just surreal to have that happen just out of the blue like that.
Yeah. Well, also when you move up in the business, you get a publicist, and they how it works is they'll call you up and see, are you available to do a red carpet, and you should do them because you'll be able to network with actors or musicians. So I get invited to a lot of that stuff, and I rarely ever say no.
Right.
But it's a real education to get invited to that stuff because you can talk to people and a network, and
Sure.
what's important too is you feel a shift inside as far as your confidence, and I felt it a couple times. And you get better doing red carpets and interviews and stuff, and you feel like, okay, this is happening.
Hmm.
Just try and enjoy the ride, because when you're in it, you don't really realize it's happening right now. It's right there in front of you.
Right.
But
Right.
that's a pretty cool thing, and it gives you enough gasoline to keep going and keep moving. And now I'm to the point where I feel it now, and I go if I have a purpose to go to a red carpet or to speak, or speaking here today. Now it's to the point where see a lot of people kind of that are arrogant. They're trying to prove something, and they're not. It's probably not the way to do it. It's best to let people find out about you and be humble. And I'm to the point now where I'm working on my third movie, a sequel to Cherry Future, and I just want to do a really good film. And I'm not in so much of. When you're young, you're in a hurry to make it and hurry to. I'm not in a hurry. I just want to do a really good job, and I don't give a f how long it takes. I want this to be really good. So my new album, Trouble in Heaven, Ghosting, I got to spend a lot of time on lyrics and vocal melody. Like that stuff usually needs the most work. We can all play guitar, and it's just, repeating patterns, but
Right.
singing with passion and having a melodic melodies and rich harmonies and something that's meaningful and deep lyrics, that's more fulfilling than anything.
Right.
And then the money will follow. If you worry about money, it's probably a bad way to go. But
right.
Sometimes it does happen for people. They get a one-hit tour, and people do get lucky, but most don't.
Right. That's a good point. A good point.
Are you influenced by Van Halen in your writing? And
you know what? It's funny. You know when
original, right?
Yeah. I'm working on a new thing now, and no, you know what's funny about I loved Eddie, and he was the reason I play, but I just never. Even when I've done like shows where I've done tributes or whatever for Eddie, there you go. There's your
Ewok want to say hi.
There's your little boy. All right, cool.
This guy's been causing trouble this whole interview. At my feet, I've been using the squirt. Look at you're on camera. He's been bugging me this whole interview, so I had to show him.
Come here, hold on.
He's got his own fan base too.
This is mine right here.
That's too funny.
He's wet. Anyway, yeah, no, my writing is I just never naturally played like Eddie because he's such a different player, And so my music's more, I got into when I was younger, I got exposed to a lot of film music. So I was I love the fusion of strings and metal. Like a lot of the kind of new metal, some of it maybe trying to think, when they've done these things where they've done orchestra and rock band type things together.
I love it when they War Pigs and they add an orchestra to it and strip the band off and add Ozzy's voice. Yeah, I love that stuff too. So
it's sort of I tend to go in that direction. So I don't really, I wouldn't say if somebody listened to my music, they would immediately think Van Halen, maybe other than maybe the tone, the sound.
Yeah, that's good. Find your own sound,
Yeah. My music's
not. You have a cover band and original band, I take it?
Yeah, both. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've been doing this, since I was 13. Eddie was the reason I saw that 81 video. That's what it was. Seeing Unchained on Don Kirshner's rock concert. That was what got me into this.
That's what they need to re-release because that quality is really good on that Oakland show, right?
Yeah, man, that was the thing for me. I heard that drop D, and I was like, I don't know what this is, but it's for me.
We take a B string and drop it to A, and it's so funny when front of house guy will go on the speaker and say, "Hey, it's a little murky down there." I'm like, "Thank you, that's how we want it." But I had this Brian, head from Korn, and he was influenced by Steve Vai and George Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
But he said that it wasn't his thing. He didn't find him. He knew it wasn't him. Mm-hmm. As we all want to be Jimmy Page or Hendrix or Van Halen. Right. I found that wasn't me until years later. And the alternative new metal thing with Linkin Park really changed me. And then the hardest part was finding your voice as a singer and writing lyrics and stuff. That for me took the longest. And some people, how young was Robert Plant when it happened to him? But It burned out quicker.
True.
So it's
true.
Which one would you take, later in life or early in life?
Right. I'm like you. I'm sort of a late bloomer. I've always kind of found my way a little later. But the journey is part of the win, when you get to experience all the things you experience in this business, whether, for me, going out and just working is half the fun, because it's just, I get to do this for a living and there's nothing better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I could do any other job, but this job is the job that I've always wanted to do. So I don't have there's no day that I go to work that I hate playing guitar. Ever.
Yeah. You should get Wolfie. Did you have Wolf on, or you just talked to him?
Not yet. I've talked to his publicist a few times, and I've been trying to get him, but he's been really busy and doing the road thing and all that. So I thought, maybe, even if he watches any of this or seen any of this, that he probably needed to be in the right headspace before he did anything like that. Talked about his dad.
Did you have Michael Anthony on? I thought you did, right?
I haven't had Michael, but I've also talked to Kevin, and I
Doogie.
talked to Doogie about being on.
Yeah.
I haven't formally approached Michael, but I do have friends that know him, and I hope to get him at some point. Yeah, for sure.
Got to ask him. Michael, get on here and talk to Jeffy.
Yeah, and I've actually gone to Satriani's people as well, and he is supposed to maybe be on, so I'm hoping to get him, and so we may have him, and I'm excited to find out what happened. I just kind of go with it, man. I see people's names and I go, oh, I forgot about that guy. There's all these people that are involved, in this story with Van Halen that I'd see him. Like Mark Ferrari was a guy in your documentary that I thought of. Mark was around during that period too, and there's people like that. John Gadesi was in your video. Another
Yeah.
person around in that area. There's a number of guys that were in your documentary that I thought, man, that guy would be good. That would be a guy that I could talk to that would know some stories.
Oh, yeah. You could probably get Mike Shannon. He's real
Yeah,
approachable.
of course. And Mike, I've met Mike, and I briefly spoke with him at NAMM about his involvement with the second Randy Rhoads guitar, and
Yeah.
talked a little bit for a minute. But yeah, Mike's cool, super cool guy, and I'd love to have him for sure.
Tim Wilson's the original guy who worked on the Rhodes body.
Yeah, the original.
I think, yeah, it was too big and awkward. And
yeah, Randy was tiny, and that guitar was huge.
yeah, for some reason they said that he liked. I never met Randy, but he liked really heavy guitars, which is weird because he's so tiny.
Right. Amazing.
Like Prince, I met Prince once, and I couldn't believe how small this guy was. That's another thing about rock star. I mean, I'm 6 foot, big guy. Gene Simmons is a big guy, but some of these guys, most rock stars are tiny.
Right. Phil Collins, one of those guys that was in your documentary. I've met Phil a few times. Small guy.
Phil's a medium-sized guy.
Yeah, but you would think he would be super tall, and he's not super tall or anything. He's really built,
Yeah,
He's probably about 5'9".
He was really cool, and I'll tell you a story.
Yeah.
When I did the interview, I'm like, hey, you got to play a little bit. Let's do some blues. And I go, let's bring the amp out by the pool, because he had a pool with it was on the side of a mountain, and you could see the valley below, which is a beach. And he says, no, I don't want to bring the amp outside. I'm like, come on, it looks cool. And he goes, oh, some people thought it was maybe too pretentious. And I'm like, I think I was so comfortable. I grabbed his amp and a guitar, and I'm like, dude, let me show you. And we plugged in, and I started playing, and like two kids says, oh, give it to me. And he grabbed the guitar out of my hands, and he did the scene by his pool. That's how I got him to do it.
Well, it looked great. I mean, and actually, that really did sound good and looked great. I just watched it last night, so yeah.
I know people. That's an everyday occurrence. Like, oh, there's a rock star playing guitar by his pool. And
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. But yeah, you had Nuno too by his pool, or near his pool anyway, in his studio. But yeah,
the Nuno story. He had I think he still has that big house. I don't know how that guy made so much money, but he did something right. Maybe the one hit song would made enough revenue, but he's in this massive place right by the Hollywood sign. We show up, he answers the door, or assistant or someone, and went and got him. He was in bed, and he came to the door and goes, man, I'm really sick, but fuck it, I'm going to do the interview. So he had the flu that day.
Wow.
And just meet me upstairs. So you go up these steps, way up, there's a pool above, because there's a layered levels of the house. And we went up to the pool, and then there was a studio outside next to the pool, like a pool room or something. Well, that's where his studio is at. We did the interview there, and I felt kind of bad because he was sick that day. But then we ended up joking around, and we went out by the pool, and we actually wrote a song about David Lee Roth, and because the singers went from Extreme to Van Halen, and we said, what if Dave joined Extreme? We wrote a song right on the spot. Like, maybe someday I'll do an extras of all the outtakes from the Charvel gang, because there's tons of stuff where even Mike Anthony talks about Ian Gillan being one of his big influences as a singer.
Wow.
And, again, you go in and talk to him. I mean, this. I always tell people, know everything about the person you're about to interview. Like the people that know their shit will Google you, know everything. when you walk into that meeting, it'll, for me, it went good because I knew because I'm a guitar player, I could speak that language, that secret language with Slash, and he opened up to me. Everyone opened up once they knew, I knew about, chords and music and theory.
Right.
And
Right. Yeah. That's
your shit.
very important part. Yeah. I know that, when I speak to, people like Steve Stevens or whatever, I think that, there's that thing, like you said, the language. And once they know that I know that language, it's all good.
Yeah, you're speaking the buzzwords and stuff. But
Right.
Steve, I'm a big Thompson Twins fan, and he was surprised that I knew that he had played with them.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm a big fan of his work with them. And again, I tell musicians, like, Thompson Twins were like alternative to me, like, new wave, what they called it, but they were so advanced on keyboards. And I thought it was great that a badass like Steve Stevens was playing guitar on some of their stuff. And that's what I tell people, try and expand your horizons. And it's great to learn Van Halen stuff, but, do other stuff too.
Oh,
Try and find your own sound and expand yourself. Like, I don't know how closed-minded Eddie Trunk is to newer music. I know he likes, is it U2? He likes a couple of those bands that are.
Yeah, I'm not sure which ones he's kind of into, especially in that newer thing. I know he probably likes Alter Bridge. He probably likes a little bit of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I almost had Zach Wilde on, and Zach is just a beast maniac. And this is going back to the Dolly Parton thing. When I met Zach, we hit it off, and we went right into politics, giving zero Fs of like being afraid to talk about stuff. We went right in. We were like cruising around in this Hummer and making funny videos. And I don't know, some people, he's a badass. I get along with people that are.
I've never actually met him like formally, but he seems like a great guy, and he loves Eddie Van Halen. He's got a real passion for Randy and Eddie, and he speaks so well about them. And that's like, whenever I think about people that are going to be on, I like to see their passion for the subject, just like, I have for it, because it's such an entertaining thing to see that interaction between somebody. Like, I had George Lynch, and we had a super conversation, and Steve Stevens the same way. It's great to have somebody who, like Zach, who is so passionate about music, and you connect with him.
He also, the guy's talented. He got a lot of energy.
Oh yeah.
And I tell people this, man, if you want to be a rock star or a director or actor, make it your job. Figure it out. Figure out how to make money at doing it. And first of all, be jaw-dropping good at what you do, because it's just so competitive. And most original bands you go see are like horrible and boring, and just terrible.
Yeah.
I do a residency at the Hard Rock Cafe by myself, and it's really challenging. They said you could do originals, but it's better for me just to do cover songs, everything from Prince to, Deep Purple to Trower, and do it by yourself. And I have this looper machine. I have strings. I have a bunch of effects. I've got stuff, a harmonizer on my voice. And every time I do it, I build the show up even more. And I tell people, man, make your stuff jaw-dropping. I don't care if you're playing a backyard party, because when Van Halen played at backyard parties, it was mind-blowing how good they were. And you don't have to be Mozart. Find something you're good at, and find out what your strong points are, and push that, and make it jaw-dropping when people. And that's another thing that bands are not doing good on tours. Is I think their shows are boring, or their songs aren't good enough, and they don't last long.
Mm-hmm.
Put on a really good show. Look at Rammstein. The guy's not really a singer, but he's captured something poetic that connects with people. They put on a really good jaw-dropping show, and that's how you do it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
What do I know?
Yeah, I saw. Well, no, because you've been around, though. But that's the thing. Steve, you interviewed Steve Vai in your documentary too, and Steve has a lot of similar viewpoints about with your strengths to he always says, what is it said, ignore your weaknesses and accentuate your strengths. Figure that out, you know, kind of to amplify what you do great, and then make that, like you said, jaw-droppingly great, like he did.
Find something, yeah.
Yeah, you're
Look
passionate.
at Adam, not a great singer. Um, Bowie was a great songwriter and was very into melody and lyrics. That's what made him great. And then he'd worry about the show.
Yeah, right. So Michael Anthony, you interviewed him. You said you spent some time with him. What was that like in his compound and seeing all those great basses from the past and the, you know,
Wow.
all that?
Like I said, met him a couple times and he never remembered, but he's got a compound, a disclosed area in California.
Mm-hmm.
The building, and
Right.
Doogie set that up. Thank you, Kevin. And we got there early and set up, and he came walking in and was kind of like, he's funny, like, what the F is going on here? Because we had the amp set up, and he was probably thinking he was walking into a jam, which it wasn't. And then once we started talking, I hit it off with him right away, and we were talking and stuff, and he knew I knew my stuff about guitar playing and stuff. And I had requested to Doogie get out the old Charvel guitars,
Yeah, right.
the one used on that. When you see a photo of a guitar, it's immortalized, and that record's popular, like that bass he had and Van Halen too.
Yep.
So definitely that bass. There's another one too we couldn't find. And then Doogie got out. I go, and do you have the Jack Daniels bass? And well, no, they didn't have the original. That was in the Hall of Fame. So
Right.
we got a replica out. Well, remember Charvel made that first one.
Yep. Yeah.
Donna Gregory was passed, did the graphics on that guitar. And then remember, it took like a week for her to do the graphics on it. So they brought out the Jack Daniels guitar, that's the Splatter Explorer, and the one from Van Halen too. And I was happy just to have those three. And Doogie pulled them out before Michael got there. And of course, we're like playing them and taking pictures with him, like, look at, you know. So he came walking in. He was really delightful. And in his place, there's just, that's another thing I noticed about celebrities. People give you stuff and you collect a lot of stuff. And the problem that comes with that, because I'm friends with George Lopez a little bit, and people give him cars and you have to store all that shit. So some of these people have buildings with exotic cars and stuff because they have to put their stuff somewhere. That can kind of subconsciously weigh your mind down, owning so much stuff. Because what are you going to do when you die? Like, someone's going to get stuck with all that stuff.
Right.
Fortunately, that stuff's all sellable and expensive stuff. So anyways, Mike had all these exotic cars. He goes, oh, that's a one of a kind over there. And there's Lloyd, that guy, that famous car builder in Southern California, that's one of those. A Ferrari's there. There was a lot of Van Halen. There's a Van Halen pinball machine in the corner. It was a woman and children first. And he goes, man, I got to get rid of that shit. I'm like, I'll take it.
Right.
Lots of road cases. I tried to film as much as I could. And then he had his hot sauce line. He showed me, he gave me a couple of bottles of that. They gave me some of his bass strings I still have. Just a lot of side stories. Like, he would tell me, I won't disclose what he told me, but and that's sometimes you'll be around someone really a megastar, and I'll be telling you secret stuff. I'm like, why are you telling me? Don't tell me this.
Right.
Why are you telling me this? Like, some really inside shit about Van Halen and Alex and Roth. And so that's how that day went. And I think we were there like 4 hours. And Mike we were going from car to car, and he was telling me about this car, and we talked about his tattoo and Rat Fink, and Rat Fink, Roth, the famous guy who started Rat Fink, the custom car builder, painter guy. That's another thing that the Charvel and the California is known for, is cutting edge. I don't know why, but coming up with new stuff and trends, motocross bike, that whole BMX bike thing, as I was part of that. It's just, what is it, Synergy or um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
synchronicity when things sort of happen and you don't know you're doing someone else is doing it. A
Right.
lot of that's California, so I should have probably emphasized more of custom cars and custom guitars, and even
Well,
rockets. A lot of stuff comes from California. We're not as liberal as everyone thinks we are. There's a lot of conservative innovators here.
I was going to say, there was Ernie you mentioned earlier, painted.
Ernie,
Yeah, he came from the car side, right? He was a car painter, like custom car stuff.
Ernie the painter. Oh, Ernie was
Yeah,
the painter at Charvel.
at Charvel. Yeah, and I believe that when I spoke with him, I forgot how I found out all that. Maybe it was Grover that told me about his kind of specialty being cars, and that's how he brought him into the shop.
Oh, right. Yeah, and Bruce, the painter after him, was a car guy too.
Yeah, because when I told you I was at, we were talking offline about me being over at Grover's shop for a while one night. He told me about that painting of that first Concorde and Ernie's background and all of that.
Yeah, and then he worked at GJ2 most recently before.
Right before Grover got out.
Yeah, but he called me up and he kind of chewed me out. You got that story wrong about the headstock and the painting. I'm like, oh, that's you. And he goes, yeah. I go, I'm sorry, but yeah, get over it. No one's perfect.
You do what you can. You try to string all the history together. It's quite a thing. And when I met Grover that night, I thought, man, this is a story that needed to be told, and you were already working on it.
No, but there was 3 other filmmakers that tried to do it before me, and I can't tell you how difficult. A lot of people don't want to be in it. They're difficult. So that was not an easy film to make. It was like,
yeah, it's a tough. Yeah. It's tough to get people to commit to things, and just get them to come on here and talk about Van Halen. Sometimes it's harder than you think. You think that everybody want to talk about Eddie, but some people just don't want to do it.
I feel good about the film. I feel like it's pretty organized. It's pretty easy to follow, and it's entertaining. And Tom Dumont, of no doubt, we got really close, and a lot of people I was talking and texting. I still talk to Tom, and he said, "Dude, whatever you do, don't make it a bunch of talking. You got to put music in it." And it gave me the idea. I'm like, oh, he's right. That's why there's so many jams throughout the film,
right?
And I tried to get more. Like Slash, I knew we only had him for so long. He's not going to jam. I don't want to push. I'm not a pushy person, but right. Some of them, I told Tom, Ronnie Mancuso, I said, we got to jam. We got to play it, but let me just play something on bass and just jam to it. And Spacey T, I said, let me just play bass, and his girlfriend played drum. Just jam, because I don't want to write anything, get any legal bullshit on these songs. We can jam all day long. Just a 12-bar blues or boogie, whatever. So I did that a lot, and that's what separates the Charvel gang, because there's a lot of music jamming and you could see a lot of the shredding, a lot of guitar shredding and stuff. And
yeah, the Spacey T thing was really cool. I mean, that guy was awesome, man. That guitar he had was so cool. And
yeah, he got that back from the guy who ended up buying it. We borrowed it for that scene, but
wow.
I didn't mean to be in it so much. It was just like, hey, I'll play bass, and because I had to coax him into playing, and Phil Collin, I had to play a little bit, get him going, and get like, oh, I'm going to blow you away. So he grabbed the guitar and ripped on it after I was done. The only other person who's done it to me is, Phil X. So Phil X, and we were at Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp, and I'm playing guitar through an amp, and I'm thinking I'm ripping, and it's a crappy guitar, but it's tuned, and I'm ripping on it. Phil X, I put it down, and Phil X grabs it and just shreds on it. And Phil X is not like anyone else. He's really that good. Like, he's a good singer. He plays guitar, but his background? He was playing that Greek instrument. He's from Canada.
Yeah, Bouzouki, yeah.
Ripping arpeggios on it. Well, he was trained in that stuff, and he just put it on guitar, and he's amazing, but
Phil's been on here. Phil's been on here. He was on here early on, one of my first really kind of like celebrity guitar player guests. And he loves Eddie Boy. I mean, he loves Eddie like all of us do. And yeah, he's awesome. Love that guy.
Yeah. Story about Ed coming into the studio and seeing it. He's another one. He's just really good. He's a nice guy. He's approachable. That's
Yeah.
how you're going to get somewhere.
He's
He's a big guy, I guess. Right?
he's a what?
I mean, I know he's in Bon Jovi. He's in the Drills, but he's also a big session player,
Oh
which is
yeah, yeah. That's kind of how he got going.
that.
Yeah, he got going through all the session work that I think he was paint. There's a story where he was painting Tommy Lee's house, and somebody needed a guitar player, or Lee needed a guitar player, and they go, the guy out and painting your thing's a good guitar player.
Is that really? I didn't know.
That's the story. Yeah, and then he goes in there in the studio because Tommy was doing something, and he ended up jamming on that. And it's kind of, I think it started a ball rolling. He ended up doing a bunch of stuff for a lot of different artists as just a session guy.
Hey, and Adi Bro worked at Charvel. I got him a job there, and
I knew that. That's cool because I had Mark Kendall on here as well.
Yeah. Hey, Adi was in a band called. Adi was in a local band called Riff Raft.
Okay.
And he was one of the few guys who had a double kick and was just an amazing. He was like Alex Van Halen. He's a good drummer. Mm-hmm. I don't think he gets highlighted enough in Great White because he's just, I mean, that kid could have been in Deep Purple or in any band. And I liked him. I go, that guy, we became friends and he was looking for work. I go, I can get you a job at Charvel. And he worked there for a while.
Right, he said that in your documentary. It's kind of cool that he took that job and being more of a drummer. But yes, that's cool though.
I actually forgot that I'd got him the job. He reminded me, and I'm like, that's right, I did. Party recently at his booking agent, and we just kind of laughed like we've known each other for so long. But yeah, our music's gone in different, taking different routes.
Right. It's amazing though, the story behind all of this stuff, and the Charvel Gang thing, man. It's a fantastic piece of work that you put out there. Thank God somebody did it. I mean, this is the kind of documentaries that somebody has to take the bull by the horns, and you did it, man. And I appreciate that for sure. That was something that, like I said, I've watched it 3 times, man. I
appreciate that. It did fall apart a couple times, and I had to stop for 2 months. And that's when I got a hold of Michael Charvel and got Wayne, and we got it going again.
Yeah. Michael and I have been talking, and I think hopefully Michael will be on soon. He's just been really busy, but I think he's kind of taken over a lot from his dad. But there's that, there's those great shots of his dad playing one of his Wayne guitars, and then Michael playing the Megazone that he made. That's so freaking cool looking with the leopard print. That's cool.
I mean, how cool is it? I had no idea Wayne, what level of player he was. And I asked Michael, does he play? He goes, yeah, he's good. I'm like, and I knew Michael was good. I'm like, okay, so will he play? And he goes, yeah, I think he'll do. Let me talk to the old guy. And he gets in there and he started playing that old jazzy stuff, Django stuff. I don't know what he was doing. It was kind of Django Reinhardt, and just ripped. I'm like, oh my God. I felt special because I tell you, the 2 interviews, getting Wayne Charvel to play guitar and capture it on video, and that other one with Punky Meadows, because he had went MIA, and I don't ever remember seeing any interviews with Punky Meadows. And here I am, like, thinking I'm the first guy to interview him, captured on tape. Since then, he's done a bunch, but I was like fanboying out when I did the Punky Meadows, because he was such an enigma. Like, this guy disappeared, and what happened to him, and all of a sudden they're back again, and he was doing his solo record, and then that's when we're getting back together. But those 2 things, I felt like, how lucky am I to capture these 2 guys in the film. And the Wayne Charvel was mind blowing. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's so good. And he gave a really good interview, and I call him once in a while, and I talk to Michael once in a while. Michael's a super talent too.
Yeah, I've been talking to Michael here and there, and we're trying to get it together. But yeah, I definitely want to get Michael on, and maybe Wayne at some point. We'll see. But another thing I thought about was Carlos. Carlos Cavazo was in that band Snow, and you brought that up in the documentary. And people don't really realize his connection to that scene and during the Van Halen era as they came through. In the '70s, late '70s. So that's kind of a cool thing.
Oh, that was another thing that we went to his house for that interview. Mm-hmm. It was really nice. And they had pre-ordered sandwiches from Subway. So first thing we did was we sat down like a family and had, my crew and her, Carlos and Vicky.
Hmm.
We had sandwiches and we were cracking jokes and getting comfortable. And then we went out and started the interview. And that went really good. And I don't remember. I said, bring out a bunch of guitars. And I think he came out with that nylon string guitar and started playing. I'm like, oh my God, do your jam, but do some flamingo stuff, but just kind of noodle around.
Right.
So I'm proud of the fact that that's something you probably didn't see. And like, again, I was like, I didn't know this guy was that good of a player.
Oh yeah. 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 And that was a cool, like you said, you just caught that on film, and it was great. It was great to watch him play like that, and just kind of see some things like that you didn't expect.
I like to do stuff that hasn't been seen or done before, or like, I didn't expect that, because that's entertainment if it's doing something fresh and different. Like, so yeah, I saw him play that flamingo stuff. I'm like, damn, he's not just a metalhead. This guy can really play like Randy Rhoads did. Randy was into that too.
Right, right, absolutely. Like you said, watching Wayne play was cool. I mean, it's just, Wayne's just not out there much at all, and then to get to see him play guitar and his son play guitar too is really cool, especially with this story. That's such a cool thing to see all these different guitars from that era, and see them in the flesh again, like Michael's bass. That bass was so cool to see. It looked like it was in still great shape. The first one he had, the zebra wood one. Yeah, it's amazing stuff, man. Well, I don't want to keep you all day, man. I know you got stuff to do, but man, I really appreciate you coming on and being a part of this. And down the line for sure, if something comes up, I'll pull you in again if some kind of thing happens where we can get some Charvel gang people together or something like that. That'd be really cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah, get Mike Shannon on there. And
yeah.
So the original Charvel gang is on streaming. You can actually see it for free on YouTube now. And we made a little the distributor on there, so everyone can go see it there.
Talk about your the Sherry Future thing.
Cherry Future was released in 2018, and it was my first film. Mm-hmm. I just renegotiated a deal for a better distributor, so it's going to come out again in October to be on Amazon and Pluto and all these streaming, Apple TV.
Cool.
And that it's been remastered and stuff, and it features Trouble in Heaven more. It's sort of like a Purple Rain story. It's a true story of a band and stuff. Mm-hmm. That was another tough film to make, but so we just finished a new record, Ghosting, Trouble in Heaven, and we released Go, which is on YouTube now, and that's going to be it's leading into a sequel, sort of a concept album. So it tells the story of what happens next, because it's sort of gotten a cult following from Cherry Future, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool to be walking around and someone will yell out a line from Cherry Future, which is a pretty small film, and people know it and see me and yell something out to me, something funny from the film, and man, that's a good feeling. It's so fulfilling. Like, all right, I made a little bit of a dent. But yeah, we're getting ready to pre-production for the sequel. Right now, we're releasing 2 more videos from Trouble in Heaven, and just gotten so much better with camera gear and directing and editing and writing, and just keep going. Just make yourself get better and keep pushing. And if I can do it, anybody can do it.
All right, absolutely. It is all about pushing and just making your incremental, steps to make yourself even better. It's, what's funny is last night while I was watching your thing, I had popped over and watched this Blue Angels documentary, and, the parallels in the way that they work and the way that they fine tune themselves, to do what they do. It's sort of like musicians. Musicians go out there and we do these small incremental things to make ourselves better and better and better. And that's what you're saying, with your films. Every little step is a road that goes somewhere, and then you get some guy on the street that confirms that you did that. You finally, like you said, somebody confirms that for you, that work you did, hit somebody. It's awesome.
Yeah, I get nice messages all the time, and the best is when you're at a club and you get respect and someone recognizes you and tells you how much they enjoyed, especially if it's like some big rock star, and then and that these people never talked to you before, but yet they're coming up to you, dude, I saw your thing. Like, I think Eddie Trunk was pretty surprised by the whole thing, and we had met times, but when he was pretty impressed with the Vinny, Vinny and Rudy jam.
Right.
That was pretty good. It's always nice to be respected, right?
Right, it is, and that was cool. That was a great jam, and the way that was shot and the vibe that came across in it was really cool. Fantastic work, man. Good job on that. I mean, it's really hard.
All right, you're a nice guy. I think I'll come back again. We're going to be friends, and
let's do it, man. You hit me up anytime. You got my number. Anytime, man. I'll be out in LA and at NAMM, so maybe I'll see you there or something.
Yeah, I'm always there. I'm usually hanging at the Ernie Ball Strings.
Okay, I'll be looking for you.
Hector and Black Star too, and Trace Agave's Tequila and DW. We got a little pickup from DW drums because of the movies and stuff we're doing. But usually I'm at the Ernie Ball.
Thanks, Paul.
Love you, brother.
Have a great day, man. Love you, man. Have rock on, man. See ya. Bye-bye.
Thank you.